Hi and welcome back to the Quarry Gardener, and I've just added a very pretty, although small, rhododendron called Delta, and this one flowers with rosy lavender flowers in late May, and it's now the beginning of June, so you can see it's in full bloom, and it's one that I've had since last year. I've actually kept it going all year and it's repaid me with these lovely flowers, so I've added that today. But on the other side of this bank side are the very first plants that I added here down in the Quarry Garden, and that was over 20 years ago. I added 5 rhododendrons and then I stopped because life got in the way, and I didn't actually continue anything down here in the quarry until the pandemic hit in COVID, when I decided that I was going to redevelop this quarry garden. But these 5 rhododendrons are just magnificent, and I only wish that I'd actually planted more at that time, then this whole bankside could have been covered in them. But let me just show you a picture of what it looked like way back 20 years ago. It was so nice seeing that old photograph. Just reminded me of how far we've actually come, even though this was the only section that I did work in all those years ago. But once COVID hit and the pandemic was here, I started to come down here an awful lot. Obviously, we're all confined to our homes in those days, and I made the decision to try and develop the quarry down here, the bottom of the quarry. And I started this section, I think it was over a year ago now, just over a year ago, to add Astilbes and Hostas, and that's mainly because coming down this bankside, the water just runs down, and it's very moist down here. Ideal situation, ideal environment for those type of plants. So I dug out a lot of hostas that I already had, bought a few, same with the Astilbes, and I started this area last year and I called it Hosta Ali. Don't ask me why, you think of a name, and it just stuck. So I've continued with that name. So this is Hosta Ali, and I'm going to work in a new section of that today. So this is the new area, the new section of Hosta Alley. Mr. Quarry Gardener has been out with a chainsaw and helping me lay out the border, so we can actually differentiate between the paths and where the border is. And we had hoped this year to actually gravel all of these paths, which will eventually go around the new Stumpery area, but that's a job that we didn't get done this winter, so it'll be later in the year or possibly next year now. But I've got some nice plants to add to this section. My sister's kindly donated some hostas that she's dug out of her garden, so I'm going to add those. I've actually bought this particular hosta, and this is Sum and Substance. Never had this one before, but apparently it grows really big with huge leaves, so I think that will look good on the entrance here to the Hosta Alley. Also going to grow some more of these Rhododendrons. Now these are one of my favourite plants to grow, and you actually grow them for the architecture that they bring to a space, not for the flower. It does have a flower, but the flowers aren't anything to write home about. But actually adding this to the entrance, and I'm hoping to add it here to the entrance, which is directly opposite the bog garden. I'm going to add one over there too, and I think it'll fill this area because these plants grow really big. They can grow anything up to a metre and a half in height and width, with huge leaves that will be twice the size of those. Don't know whether it'll grow that big here because it's actually in partial shade, so that might stunt the growth, but it will enjoy this very moist ground. They like moist soil, will grow in clay as well, so I think it should do really well down here. So I'm going to plant those and the hostas, and then I'll show you it all at the end. So that job took an awful long time and effort. It's now the next day, the next evening. I did get it finished and I'll show you it. But I thought because I've had an awful lot of new subscribers in the last couple of weeks, I'd give you a brief tour of what this space looks like going into where I actually garden down here in the bottom of the quarry. Now this border along the side here, my left-hand side here, I planted this up about 18 months ago now, full of primulas, hellebores, tiarellas, daffodils, snowdrops, that kind of thing. And this time of year, the tiarellas are just like candelabras. They really love this very dark, dry space. They do so well, so I can certainly recommend those to anybody who has a very shaded woodland type setting. They are definitely the star of the show along this border. So continuing down the path, you come to an area that we have just started to work on, and it's going to be a stumpery. Doesn't look much yet. We're lining the path with all of these stones, and these stones are the stones that I'm digging out every time that I create a border. It's hard work, really is hard work. But this will be something that we'll work on in the coming weeks. Nothing much to show you yet, pretty much just piles of earth and some little tree stumps. But we'll come to that soon in the coming weeks. But let me show you the border that I finished yesterday. So that's the Hosta Alley, more or less complete. It's got an awful lot of growing to do, but I must admit I'm quite delighted with it. It's really starting to bulk up. And it looks something, it's got presence now, so I'm really happy about that. The Regersias are very small at the entrance to the Hosta Alley. They've got to bulk up an awful lot. But at least now you can actually see that it's an entrance to a garden. And similarly on this side, I'm going to add some more Regersias over here. And this is the entrance to the bog garden. For anyone that's newly subscribed, this is going to be a bog garden. The soil was pretty compacted, so digging out the soil did take some time, I must admit, and it was very hard on the old back and knees. But I got there in the end, it's done now, and I can move on to another new area. So to continue the tour, following the path around the corner here from Hosta Alley is another new area that I started 2 to 3 years ago. Planted it up with bulbs and perennials and grasses, so let me take you around and I'll show you how that's doing too. So this is the bankside border. It's a bankside and it's a border. I've got to get better at naming places in the garden. But this border is predominantly made up of plants from elsewhere in the garden. Haven't really purchased anything in this garden or in this border other than the evergreens. The alliums have bulked up, so I have the Alchemilla mollis, the Nepeta, the geraniums, daylilies. The only thing that I've actually bought in here, I think, are the geums and a couple of evergreens at the top. Biggest self-seeders in here are foxgloves, and they do really well in this border. I think it's so dry, they just self-seed around and they're everywhere. So I'm looking forward to when they actually all flower. So going from the developed section of the bankside border to this huge massive comfrey, and this is obviously a border for another day. But the bees are loving it because I can hear them. Anyhow, I'd just like to say thank you to everyone who subscribed recently. The numbers have gone up to over 800, so I couldn't be more pleased. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you soon.